What we're into in America now in the church culture and in the national culture says everything's big and up top. No, Bible says everything's down here at the bottom. Song of Solomon 8:13 says, your friends listen to your voice, so speak. All right, I can't touch but 3 people. Great, I'm going after my 3 people.
Right.
Yeah, but the president's got 330 million. Good for him. I've got 3. I'm going to take care of my 3. And so if we get that mentality that I am going to learn myself and that I'm going to give others what I learn, I'm going to disciple others. I'm going to make a little accountability group of just 2 of us or 5 of us or whatever. We're going to study the scriptures 30 minutes a day, or we're going to call each other and read the Bible out, whatever it is. That's the stuff that'll change America. And that's what revival does. It trickles up. It doesn't come from the top. It goes from the bottom up.
In every generation, there have been revivals, massive moves of the Spirit that changed the course of history. In every revival, there were believers like you who chose to answer the call, to become the one in their generation. Discover your call to be the one in your generation.
Welcome to Revival Radio TV. I'm glad you're with us today. Today I'm excited because we have with us back again our guest David Barton. Thank you, David, for joining. Historian, man of many talents, and a great memory. We're going to talk about, David, recently we discussed on this program about the haystack revival and how these college students were seeking God in literally in a haystack to escape a storm. And in the middle of it, some things came out of that revival, including one of the gentlemen was what we're going to talk about today, Samuel J. Mills, the founder of the American Bible Society. So as we were delving into this topic and understanding just how far-reaching the American Bible Society was, we knew there's nobody better to talk to about this than our good friend David Barton. So David, take us through kind of that history. Pick up the story at that time with Mills and what happened with the American Bible Society.
Well, even predating Mills, there was, anytime you get into a revival, and we had the first Great Awakening from 1730 to 1770.
Right.
There's a couple of things that go on. Well, actually, there's several things. One is there's a renewed interest in God's Word. People want to get back into it because revivals teach you that God's Word is very relevant, that it relates to every aspect of life. So you suddenly start saying, hey, this is a really cool book. I didn't know it dealt with economics. I didn't know it dealt with military and immigration. And so people are drawn back into it as a problem-solving thing in their own lives. And so there's a growth of the Bible, which ends up, when you change what you believe, you change what you want to live under in the way of policy. So every revival has a social outworking in political areas.
Right.
If you go back to 3 revivals in the Bible, Asa, Jehoshaphat, and Josiah, all 3 said over in the King's Version that with the revival, it changed their attitude toward what they called sodomites in the temple. Attitude toward homosexuality changed. Said, well, we thought this was okay. It's not okay anymore.
Right.
So there is a cultural shift which leads to a policy shift. And so within a revival, you get all these things going. So we finished kind of the Great Awakening in the 1770 frame. In that period of time, there is kind of a slowing down, but then it starts to rekindle. And by the time you get to the early 1800s, you're starting into the Second Great Awakening. And there were some precursors that kind of led to that. The American Bible Society was 1816, and there were some things that led to the American Bible Society, not the least of which is going back to Bibles. This is not the one we have, but this is very close to the first Bible printed in English in America. It's this size. Done in 1782. It has a congressional endorsement in the front. They want people to read it. So it's about that size. Well, then in 1791, they come out with this Bible, which is a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Now this is done by signer of the Declaration, actually. This guy right here, John Witherspoon, signer of the Declaration. He said, we need a family Bible. We need something big enough the whole family can get around and read and study. So that's what this is. And so it's the first family Bible, which is good. He's concerned that people in his state of New Jersey may not have a Bible, may not know the Bible. So he kind of performs the task of a Bible society before we officially have one. So it's a private printing. Isaiah Collins did this out of Jersey, but it's a government leader that's initiating this.
Wow.
Because unlike today, we don't separate our faith from our job.
No.
You know, back then, a revival, you integrate everything you believe with your faith. And so I happen to be a political leader. Well, my gosh, I also believe in the Bible. Why am I going to not promote the Bible because I'm a political leader? So for them, they're very actively engaged in that. So Bibles like this start coming out. Then you get to this Bible right here. Now try carrying that to church with you.
That's the pocket edition.
That's the pocket edition. This is 1798.
Wow.
This particular Bible is the largest Bible done in America to that point. We've never had one this large, and this is only half of it.
Oh my goodness.
But when you get into this is a little different. It's called a hot press Bible. What they did in 1798 was they actually heated the ink before they printed this, thinking it'd penetrate the paper better, therefore it'll last a lot longer. Clearly, it's lasted a long time.
It's done well.
It's done well.
Now, when was this?
1798.
Wow.
Now, here's kind of the fun part of this 1798 Bible. Thomas Jefferson is the guy who helped fund it. He helped fund that Bible, as did John Hancock, as did Samuel Chase, as did James Wilson. Let me just read you the people who helped fund that Bible to go all over America. Signer of the Constitution. Well, let me do Signer's Declaration first. Thomas Jefferson,
right.
John Hancock, Samuel Chase, George Reed, James Wilson right here, John Dickinson right here. I just go across. So these guys are the guys funding Bibles, funding the actually the printing and then later distribution of Bibles. And then in the Constitution side, as you go to these guys right here, you've got Alexander Hamilton is one of the guys behind that Bible. James Wilson right here. You've got let me just go down the names. Gunning Bedford, George Reed, James Wilson, John Dickinson, Jared Ingersoll, Thomas Mifflin, Alexander Hamilton, John Lansing. You got the political leaders doing stuff like that.
And am I right when you say that when they were doing this on their own?
They're doing it on their own, but it's the kind of thing they didn't make their faith private and their public service public. This is what I believe, and that's what a revival does. Because in America today, we compartmentalize our things. We're very compartmentalized.
That's true.
And a revival integrates life and brings everything back together. And the Bible and family, and the Bible and sexuality, and the Bible and education, and the Bible and everything. It starts integrating again. And that's what a revival is, where faith starts to permeate everything you do.
Wow.
And so this is the lead up. That's the Second Great Awakening starts right about 1800, 1801. It depends on where you are. Different parts of the country started a little earlier. In Virginia, it started earlier than it did, for example, in the New England area. But it also ended earlier than it did in New England. So revivals are kind of regional, even though it's a national movement. It's made up of all these local areas. And so that's really kind of at the start of the awakening. So people are really getting into the Bible, and a real turning point comes right here at this point. This is the address of the managers of the Philadelphia Bible Society to the inhabitants of the state of Pennsylvania. This is the first ever Bible Society created in the United States.
Wow.
It was done going back to this guy right here. It was done by this man right there, Benjamin Rush. And Benjamin Rush, John Adams said he's one of the three most influential founding fathers. Nobody knows him today. We used to. He was a really big deal. He's a huge civil rights leader. He helped found the first black denomination. He's the greatest physician in American history. He's an educator, started 5 universities. The guy's unbelievable in Bible and everything he did. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Rush is the one who really forced me into a biblical worldview. Because when I was studying some of these guys, I read his writings, and there were so many things he said on policy. He said, oh, yeah, of course you need to do this with criminal justice, and this with economics, and this with science. And I go, no, that's not right. The problem was he kept putting Bible verses beside everything he recommended. So if I couldn't come up with a better Bible verse than he did, and that was the first time I really got slapped in the face with, hey, the Bible does apply to everything. Because he's doing criminal justice with these Bible verses, and I disagree with it, but he's got a Bible verse there. And so he starts this. So
this is year?
This is 1809.
1809.
This is 1809. So in 1809, they do this address, and they talk about everybody needs a Bible. And Benjamin Rush gives 2 reasons for it. He said, he gives more than 2, but 2 of the big reasons. He said, if everybody can have a Bible, they can come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. They'll become Christians. He said, but if everybody gets a Bible and reads it and lives by it, he said, we'll solve all of our social problems.
The culture.
We won't have any crime, and he went through all the stuff we wouldn't have if we'd get the Bible. So they want the Bible in the hands of every person in Philadelphia specifically, and then Pennsylvania. So they start that, and it's interesting. this is what they produce. This is done by the Philadelphia Bible Society. I'll put it on inside here, and it's got the Philadelphia Bible Society. And this is from 1812, but this is the first mass-produced Bible ever done in America. Really? And actually, they did this in London, shipped it into America, and Congress helped them do it. Congress alleviated the duty. So here's what they're saying. We want a Bible in the hands of every person in Pennsylvania. So this Bible is the first Bible done by a Bible society in America. It's done by the Pennsylvania Bible Society. And what happens is word kind of goes across America, and they say, hey, we want to do what Philadelphia did. We want a Bible society too.
Sure.
And so what you find is this is the 8th report of the Bible Society of Philadelphia.
Right.
At that point in time, they list 121 different Bible societies that have started across America.
And that says 1816?
1816.
Wow.
So you start with 1809, one. Now we're 8 years later, we got 121 Bible societies across America. And so 1816, remember that because that's when the American Bible Society starts, is 1816. So this is all the precursor kind of leading up to that. So what you do is, he says there's 121, he lists them all. That's the Connecticut Bible Society. Here you have the, New Hampshire Bible Society. Here's the Bible Society of Virginia. Oh, by the way, Thomas Jefferson was a lifetime member of the Bible Society of Virginia.
Really?
We're told, oh, Jefferson hated the Bible. Wait, then why did he help print this?
Yeah.
Why was he a lifetime member of the Bible Society of Virginia who gave a Bible to every citizen in the state? Why did he give Bibles to all of his kids and grandkids when they learned to read? Why did he put the Bible in schools in Washington, D.C. when he authored the Plan of Education? I mean, the narrative today doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
But that's what you get with revival is people want back into God's Word. And by the way, here's a Bible Society for the University of Virginia, which is a school that Jefferson started.
Right.
So not only does Virginia have a Bible Society, University of Virginia has a Bible Society. Here's the Rhode Island Bible Society. Here's the Maryland Bible Society. Maryland Bible Society, by the way, was started by a signer of the Constitution, this man right here, James McHenry. James McHenry, signer of the Constitution. He was the Secretary of War under George Washington, John Adams, but he starts the Maryland Bible Society. This is the Vermont Bible Society. Here's the New York Bible Society. Here's the Massachusetts Bible Society, the New Jersey Bible Society, the North Carolina Bible Society, the Maine Bible Society, and then we go into all the Middlesex County Bible Society in Massachusetts. Here's the New York Female Auxiliary Bible Society. Here's the Newark Bible Society. Here's the Bible Society of Fairfield County. Here's the Female Bible Society of Philadelphia. Here's the Bible Society of Salem, Massachusetts. Here's the Bible, just 121 of these things. Everybody's got a Bible Society because everybody wants in God's Word. So it's
really a mark of a true revival happening, an awakening at this point.
An awakening, yeah. It's interesting. Nobody calls them revivals till after they're finished.
Right.
It's historians that look back 20 years later and say, did you see what happened back then? That must have been a revival.
Yeah.
Because the guys doing it, this is just life to them.
Right.
This is what they believe. They're living out their convictions. So all of this is going on, and with all this burgeoning movement of Bible societies everywhere for everything, there's Bible societies for sailors and for prostitutes and for women and for, whatever it is, military guys. With all this burgeoning stuff, that's when you get the first national Bible society, and that's the American Bible Society. So you have this burgeoning growth of Bible societies, and with that, this is the Constitution of the American Bible Society. So this is when they chartered, this is when they formed, it's 1816. They are announcing to the United States that we've got all these Bible societies, let's have a national one, and we can serve as an umbrella for everything. And it's kind of interesting, if I take this Bible Society, it opens up and it tells you the 8th day of May, 1816, they had the meeting, and it was at the Reformed Dutch Church, and they all got together, and that's where they opened the prayer and doctrine. And it gives you all the details on it. And so as it goes through all of this and tells you what's here, and then they give you the Constitution, it is really interesting to see who the officers are who run the Bible Society, the guys running it. For example, show you right here, you'll see. Officers of the American Bible Society, Elias Boudinot. Now, not a name that people know today. Right. Elias Boudinot is the President of Congress during the Revolution. He's the guy who signed the peace treaty to end the revolution. He's a framer of the Bill of Rights. He's not a skimpy guy.
No.
As a matter of fact, in 1794, when Thomas Paine did this work, this is called The Age of Reason. And Thomas Paine came out with this work, and it attacked the Bible, it attacked Christianity, it attacked Jews. So there is a God, but there ain't no Bible, and he doesn't speak to people today. He's long gone.
Yeah.
And so it's a deistic kind of thing. Well, when that came out, it's interesting, that, and here, this is, again, Thomas Paine, 1794, The Age of Reason. This is the book he came out with. They'd considered him a great patriot after that, but now he's attacking the Bible, and that doesn't make you a great patriot in America.
No.
So the Founding Fathers responded by going after him. I mean, George Washington cut off relationships with him, essentially. You had Samuel Adams, who started writing op-eds against him. John Adams just attacked him. Patrick Henry wrote an entire book against him. Just founder after founder. This guy's now betrayed America, but one of those books is this one. And when I open it up...
So that's in a response to the Age of Reason.
That's in response to this. This says the age of revelation, or the age of reason, shown to be an age of infidelity by Elias Boudinot. Now, he's the president of the Bible Society, and he says, no, you're not getting by with this. It is not an age of reason. That's an age of infidelity is what you got. We're going to the age of revelation. God still speaks today.
Right.
Now, Elias Boudinot did this. Elias Boudinot also did, now, we're talking a major founding father here. Here's another work that he did. This one is pretty interesting as well, because this work, you can see it's not a skinny little work here that he's got. If I can get the page delicately open here, one more page, there it is. It's the second advent, or the coming of the Messiah in glory, shown to be a scriptural doctrine and taught by divine revelation from the beginning of the world. So he goes book through book of the Bible, showing you how Jesus is going to return. So there's a founding father, and by the way, this is an interesting book. It's called A Star in the West. He says, I really think the Indian tribes in America are the lost 10 tribes of Israel. And so he goes through and speculates on how that those lost tribes, when they were scattered, the Syrians dispersed them. We never knew where they were. Right. Maybe they ended up in America because they had so many customs that were similar to Jewish customs. And so that's the president of the Bible Society. The second guy there, a guy named John Jay. John Jay is the original Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's right.
He did the Federalist Papers. Matter of fact, here is a certificate signed by John Jay for the American Bible Society. So it's a contribution given, a membership of the American Bible Society signed by the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, the Governor of New York. See, this is the American Bible Society, guys. So you continue going. You have Matthew Clarkson. He was a major general in the American Revolution, one of the heroes of the Revolution. There's only 17 major generals in the Revolution. He's one of them. George Washington was the major general, so he's the same level as Washington, except Washington Commander-in-Chief. Then you see here Smith Thompson. He's a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. He was a Secretary of Navy. John Langdon, he's a signer of the Constitution. As a matter of fact, John Langdon is this guy right there. He's a signer of the Constitution. And talking about Langdon, he's also the governor of New Hampshire. There's a prayer proclamation done by John Langdon, New Hampshire, calling the state to prayer.
Wow.
And it's not squishy little prayer. I mean, this is evangelical stuff that you have in here. So he's a founder of the American Bible Society. You continue down these list of officers. John Cotton Smith, another justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. Bushrod Washington, he's a justice on the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, Bushrod did these. These are the case reports of all the court cases in Virginia. So this is the laws, or the court decisions in Virginia. He's the nephew of George Washington, and so he's responsible really for much of the legal system of Virginia, and he's one of the founders of the American Bible Society. You keep going down through. William Wirt, the Attorney General of the United States. Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, he's a signer of the Constitution. He's a major general. I mean, you go down through these names, and you go, wait a minute. I thought preachers are supposed to run Bible societies.
Yeah.
No, it's everybody in culture gets involved in these things.
And you back to when we first started the discussion here, you said something that really history has proven out in all this you've gone through, is that they did not let their Christian beliefs become compartmentalized or separate. This is who they were.
This is who they were.
And it just took over. And in revivals, as we've seen, and the one when you're talking about it, because it affects the economy, the political environment, obviously the spiritual environment is just the same thing that happened in Wales. I mean,
It turns
the
the
Welsh
culture
revival, it totally turned the culture
The
around.
English revival with the Wesleys,
Yeah.
the same thing. Revivals work their way out in policy. And if it doesn't get to policy, you haven't had a revival yet.
That's true.
And so, because when you change the hearts of the people, you change what they put up with. When you change what they put up with, you change what laws they want and what laws they'll allow and won't allow.
Right.
And so at this point, you know, I think we are in a revival in America, but I think it'll be years before a historian talks about that, because like the First Great Awakening, it lasted for 40 years, you know?
Right.
It's not something you can point to and say, oh, we had a revival last weekend. Look how many people are different today. No, it took decades.
Decades.
And that's what, and so the American Bible Society, I mean, they get their start. They're in the Great Awakening now. The Great Awakening's been running for 15, 16 years, and it's been popping up all over the nation, all these fires everywhere, and they kind of say, well, let's consolidate. So this is the first Bible ever done by the American Bible Society. That came out in 1816. That's what they produced to be able to ship. And what they started doing was being able to provide this for states that didn't have enough money or states that needed more Bibles. They became a supply house for all these, you know, all these different local ones. And so the American Bible Society comes out, and it's interesting that, and I have various reports. This is the first report of the American Bible Society. This is the 6th report. This is the 14th report. And it's fun because it shows you who the officers are. For example, by the time you get to the 6th report, John Quincy Adams is one of the guys helping run the American Bible Society. By the time you get to the 14th report, John Marshall is, oh, by the way, Francis Scott Key is one of the managers of the Bible Society, guy who did the American flag. And then you have letters here. This is a letter from John Quincy Adams to the American Bible Society, because he can't make their meeting that year. He's an officer. But it's interesting. You know where the American Bible Society often held its meetings?
No, where?
In the hall of the House of Representatives. Wow. John Quincy Adams was a member of the House. He would sit in the chair, preside over the Bible Society meetings in the House of Representatives. They came to Congress and met there, and in the House is where he presided over the meetings. So you've got John Quincy Adams. Here's a letter from Daniel Webster, the famous Daniel Webster, American Bible Society, writing the American Bible Society. Here's one from Bushrod Washington. We talked about him as one of the founders of it. So you have all these key figures that are into this, and then you get things like this little book here. Now, John Quincy Adams is part of the American Bible Society. This is a piece that he did in 1810, 1811. It was not published until much later, but it is 11 letters that he wrote his son on how to read the Bible from cover to cover once every year.
Wow.
And it's great stuff. I mean, it is really good stuff. We actually turned that into an ebook because it's so good. But what happened was in 1848, people found it and said, we want our kids, you wrote it for your kid, we want our kids getting this too.
Right.
So this went through edition after edition after edition, showing people how to read the Bible cover to cover. Once it's written by the President of the United States. It's written, you know, what do you think today would happen if any president wrote a book like this and gave it for 10-year-olds? And so that's, you know, that's the kind of stuff that goes to the Bible Society movement. It's all part of the revival, but back then they didn't think it was revival.
There was some opposition. They just didn't walk through everything.
Oh, they had lots of opposition. As a matter of fact, one of the characteristics of a revival is that it is filled with open attacks against faith. Every revival you go to, George Whitefield, I love George Whitefield, and we herald him today as a great leader in the First Great Awakening, and he was. He preached 18,000 sermons. 80% of all people living in America physically with their own ears heard him preach a sermon.
80%?
80%. Wow. Now you think of all the thousands of towns.
Without technology.
Without technology, they physically heard him. He on horseback, he had a fold-up pulpit he'd put on the horse behind him. He'd go from town to town, and he went from Maine to Georgia on horseback 7 times, back and forth, preaching all along the way. So over the course of 34 years, 18,000 sermons, 80% of Americans physically heard him preach a sermon.
Wow.
Now, historians will tell you there is no America today had it not been for the Great Awakening.
Yeah.
What happened in the First Prayer in Congress in '74 was the personification of what he had been teaching in the Father Abraham sermon for years before. The Founding Fathers had never met each other. They got together. One of them said, let's pray. And they said, we don't pray together because some of you are Episcopalians and we're Lutherans. And over here we got Presbyterians and Baptists sure don't pray. And then that's when Sam Adams stood up and said, you remember that sermon that Whitefield used to give on Father Abraham? We need to put that into practice. And they all knew the sermon. John Adams writes about it, and Franklin and Jefferson, all these guys heard it. And so without Whitefield, it doesn't happen. Now, interesting thing about Whitefield, he does outdoor meetings. Why? Because preachers won't let him in the church.
Right.
What do you mean? The church, the church is opposed to the revival, opposed to Whitefield all the way through.
What was it that they didn't like about Whitefield? The style?
No, it's the old wineskin versus the new wineskin that Jesus talked. We don't do it that way. No. We do it through us, and you're an outsider. And so when a revival comes along, it's always going to be a new wineskin.
Right.
And that's why it's always hard. Every revival that happens, the church is the last to get on board. It happens outside the church. Charles Finney, Second Great Awakening, he was outdoor revivals because church wouldn't let him in. Lorenzo Dow, Gilbert Tennant, all these guys, they do outdoor stuff because the church, we don't do that. And in Whitefield's case, pastors literally told their congregations to go to the meeting and pelt him with vegetables, pelt him with stones, pound him. That's what preachers are doing.
That's a rough crowd.
That's a rough crowd.
Yeah.
So if you think revival is easy and smooth, it's not, and Whitefield proves it. Whitefield killed himself in a revival. Last 2 years of his life, after he would preach, he would go over to the side, cough and spit up blood and just retch his guts out and get on a horse and go to the next place and preach. He had no idea he was in a revival. It's years later historians wrote and said, Whitefield, that was a revival.
Wow.
So if you look at Whitefield and say, is revival a lot of fun? No, it's a lot of hard work. Yeah. Riding in the open on horseback for 34 years, through thunderstorms, through tornadoes, through snow, through sleet, through whatever it is, he did it. So that's the other thing is we get a spiritualized view of a revival, and a revival is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of opposition because you're trying to change old wineskins into new, and they resist. They're rigid. They don't want to do it. Whether that's the culture, no, our laws are different. Whether that's education, hey, we don't teach that religious stuff. Whatever it is, revival is always pushing against rigid things. And eventually they break. But like in the Great Awakening, it was 20 years before the church got on board the Great Awakening. And they were there for the last part, and it was all over the churches. But Whitefield was the Lone Ranger for 20 years, doing it by himself. Same with Finney and others.
So what do we do now? I feel like there are people, I know everybody's like me right now watching going, well, I bless the Lord, I want to do that. I want to be strong. What do we do, David?
We change the way we think. Your faith will drive you to be involved locally in politics, locally in education, locally with economic issues, locally. This Bible, God built a nation out of this Bible. He gave them 613 laws, and they dealt with every single thing a nation will ever need, everything. So this Bible has everything I will need no matter what I do, whether it's science, whether it's astronomy. This is a great book on astronomy. Whether it is anything at all. And if we compartmentalize our thinking, we'll never have a revival because revival is always working that book out in every aspect of life.
To the children and youth of the U.S., hold fast to the Bible as the sheet anchor of your liberties. Write its precepts in your hearts and practice them in your lives for our guide in the future. Righteousness exalteth the nation, but sin is a reproach to my people.